it just razzmatazz, flash, lots of colors, but where's the substance? Candy floss teaching.
English language teaching. Under the covers.
Hello and welcome back to ELT Under the Covers Teachers React, where we look at the good, the bad, the ugly of teaching clips on the internet. This video is part of our series where we look at religious teachers, religious scholars and their teachings, and we give them a bit of a review. We go into an analysis on how maybe they can improve upon their teaching, or just generally how well their teaching is going. Today we are focusing more on the Hindu yogi mystic world, and we're looking at a teacher called Sadhguru. But first, introductions. I'm Neil, our team teacher.
Hello everybody, it's Professor Rich.
We're going to be looking at Sadhguru, who's kind of a bit of a Hindu background, but is more in the renowned yogi mystic kind of realm. So I don't think he's totally Hindu, but there's got that kind of that background to it. I think he became enlightened very early on in his life, and he's been going around teaching yoga and teaching his philosophies, etc. And he's done a best-selling book, I believe it's called Inner Engineering, and a quick read of that, and it's kind of like a yogic guide for life, and he's developed quite a following in recent times, so I'll be interested to see how he teaches. We got a video from one of his, I think it's Inner Management DVD, so we're going to have a look at that. But I wanted to kind of pass the ball to you, Rich, and see if you have any thoughts on Sadhguru, or kind of what you expect from this kind of teacher.
Well, I thought we should also clarify our objectives for this series, which I think is to... Because obviously a spiritual guru, religious person, whatever, they're going to have some sort of a message that they want to transmit. And there will definitely be a temptation to evaluate the message. However, really as teachers, our objective is to see how well they present their message as in pedagogical terms. So it's like, how is their message understandable, and have they presented that or used any techniques in order to make that message understandable? I think that's sort of the aim, isn't it? Or that's what we're primarily trying to do.
Yeah, well, this is less of a critique of the content of his teaching, but the actual teaching and how well that is, and if there are ways that he could use pedagogical techniques to, help his students.
So I haven't got any clue about this guy whatsoever. An image is forming in my head of a guy with a beard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that true?
I think we have that, and it's kind of I want to add to what you were saying, in that we have this societal idea of like a teacher, what a teacher looks like, what a teacher does, and you have this idea of this suited, booted teacher standing in front of a blackboard, chalk and talk, and we know, and research and literature supports that that's not the most effective way to teach. It's very passive, and we are advocates of a more active student participation, student-centric rather than being teacher-centric. And a lot of my thoughts with like Sadhguru and that kind of ilk, that stereotype of, you know, the bearded is just more of the same, in that teacher centric, they just stand and talk. And yeah, so I'm interested to, because he's got such a following, as to if he does something different.
Right. Yeah, of course. And you know, it's not just about standing there and talking, because there are different ways of doing it, aren't there? Like there's sort of storytelling or asking rhetorical questions. There's certainly things we can talk about in terms of things that make the didactic approach more engaging, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Should we jump straight in then?
How well we live here simply depends on how well we manage our surroundings and how well we manage ourselves. Fundamentally, life is management. If you don't know how to maintain your body, your mind, your emotion, your situations, your life in general, your home, your communities, nations and the world, the quality of our life is just how well we manage things with ourselves. But generally, we are thinking of management, we are applying ourselves to management only in terms of business management or industry management, or generally we are talking management only with economic situations, not life as a whole. In many ways, it's unfortunate that today the most predominant factor that rules the planet has become economics. The other aspects of life have been totally pushed to the corner. When economics rules, when economics is the only thing that we are thinking about, we will tend to become very gross and unhappy in so many ways. What I see is, you know, we are conducting various levels of programs to very top-level executives in some big corporations in the world, major corporations in the world. What I see is people who have failed in their lives, they're suffering their failure. People who have succeeded in their life, they're suffering their success. If you suffer your failure, it's okay, because failure comes easy. If you suffer your success, that is tragedy, because success doesn't come easy. So, something that you worked for, something that you always longed for, something that you wanted to create in your life, when it happens, if you start suffering that, that's the real tragedy of life. But a large number of successful people on the planet are suffering their success. When I say suffering their success, if you look at people, look at yourself and see, you're still young people, most of you. When you're 5 years of age, how happy you were, and today, how happy you are. If we make a chart out of it, a graph out of it, is it moving upward or downward? In 24 hours' time, how many moments are you really happy? If you look at this, is it going up or down?
Okay, so maybe pause it for a minute. Excuse me a second. I'm quite ill at the moment.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
No.
On a chart, how ill are you throughout the day? Would you if you were 5 years old, how ill were you then?
I would say I'm a 5 today.
You're
And
at a
yesterday
5.
I was a 3.5.
Oh no, it's
So
progressive.
not that bad. Yeah, but I think today will be the worst one. And I think it'll be all right from that. I mean, actually, it's really rare that I get ill ever since I've been taking vitamin D supplementation.
It's all about the D.
Yeah, that's where you go. It's all about the D. It's all about the D and the K.
Oh yeah, you gotta
D and
have that.
The D and
so
the
you
K together.
don't get
If there was a few
bone
more
things
letters
or
in there, you
whatever.
could have all kinds of interesting
Yeah.
acronyms. So this
The I
guy.
and the C.
So this guy. So he's used a few techniques which are interesting from his perspective of someone who just sits there and talks. One of them is he said something contradictory which piques your interest, which is that he said that people were suffering their success. So as soon as someone says, oh, I think that people are suffering their success, I think you want to ask them why or what they mean, right? Because it sounds contradictory, kind of a bit weird. And this is a technique I think people use, public speakers use quite a lot. And people use it in clickbait as well, where they'll show a picture which creates a surprising contradiction to the title, which makes people want to click it to see what the hell's going on. Right.
It reminds me of
Like
Keddy, that hooky, like
It's hooky.
He'll say something, and it'll be like I don't know, like the postman and the drugs and stuff like that, and be like, oh, what would you do if the postman brought some white powder to you, and be like, but he was acting very suspicious, why would he do that? And your mind starts to go down certain paths. I kind of feel like it's similar.
Yeah, it is. It is hooky. So he's got that, and then a bit later on, there was a lot of rhetorical questions. What would you do? How did you feel when you were 5 years old, and how do you feel now? I mean, not even rhetorical questions really, but rhetorical questions with also genuine questions which get people thinking. So we're seeing a number of sort of presentation techniques, aren't we? Which, that's what you would expect, at least, with someone teaching didactically.
Yeah, and a lot of this seems to be, and a lot of the teachers that we come across that are like tuba teachers, as we've designated them, speak in this way, in this kind of like they're teaching, but they're also it's within a structure of like marketing speak. You know what I mean? Like remember when we watched Andrew Tate, and it just always felt like kind of like you're constantly having these hooks, these clickbaits thrown in, and it keeps you moving along. Emotive language, contradictory statements, kind of stuff that's a little bit out there, or I don't think the word's inflammatory, but just kind of like stuff to pique your interest. And it feels like that there's a general structure of you always have to keep throwing this stuff in. It's like when I've done comedy and I've watched people do it as well, and the really good ones is, they have these like beats, like they tell a bit of the story, then there's kind of like a punchline, a payoff, bit of a story, punchline, payoff, bit of a story, punchline, payoff. And then, the really smart ones do like callbacks to previous, and they build and layer and stuff like that. I feel like a lot of these teachers do that same sort of thing. And maybe that's what makes it engaging and successful when we're watching these guys and gals on YouTube, is that they this particular pattern is what keeps people watching. I'm not.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of that.
So, but our question is, just because it keeps you watching, does that actually help you learn? Like.
Yeah, it's a tough question, isn't it, actually? Because there is an element of, I mean, we always talk about engagement and interest, and then definitely engagement and interest are great to have in a class, without
fundamental
engagement and interest. Yeah, it's fun. It is fundamental. It's fundamental, and it's something which You know, the tuba teachers, obviously they do because people watch the videos and they have high watch time. You know, that's what YouTube's built on. But there must be a point where there's too much of that. And even there's even points where like, even is the message wrong? You know, if the message that's being presented is not useful, if it's not good information, or it's not helpful. You know, it's that idea of you're giving people the McDonald's and telling them that it's going to make them healthier.
Yeah.
You know, so that there's that part of it. Now, obviously, when it comes to spiritual ideals, it's sort of difficult for us. We can't give an expert opinion, so to speak, because we're educators, not, I don't know, divine beings or whatever. But
Speak for yourself.
indeed. But you know, when it comes to education or language teaching, one of the things that we noticed about the tuba teachers was they were very good at hooking people in for one reason or another, but oftentimes the things that they were teaching didn't gel well with our understanding of how people actually improve their language skills. So that therein comes the danger, because we have this idea that we want to tell teachers, look, there's something to be said for being a good storyteller. There's something to be said for being an interesting human that's in front of the class. You know, it's kind of reversing this idea that teacher talking time is necessarily a negative thing. And actually, there's an aspect of teacher talk quality and things like that. We want to tell teachers that so that they can get into that and embrace this a little bit. But then the danger is, the other side is, if you just go all out McDonald's, then you're using all these techniques, because that's the thing. You can use these techniques, you can use the power, but you can use the power for the dark side, right? Doesn't,
Yeah, you
it's
go
not,
full blown dancing monkey. It just becomes Coco Melon, and you know, it just razzmatazz, flash, lots of colors. But where's the substance? Candy floss teaching.
and I think this is a concern, a real concern, especially for future generations, with the popularity of things like TikTok. We do have this idea now that people are planning these sorts of talks and videos in like 10-second chunks. So it's like, what am I going to do in this 10 seconds that's going to keep people watching? What am I going to do in this 10 seconds that's going to keep people watching? And because that's what Generation Z, as they say, are kind of used to. That's their sort of the attention span. And that's why if you watch those shorts and those short videos, you get the text jumping out at you, and there's loads of motion. Everything's moving, the text is jumping out, and someone is saying like really interesting or gripping things like every few seconds. But then you have to think, what is the core, and what core understanding can we have from that? And it does seem that these sort of very popular spiritual gurus, they're doing something like that, which is sort of less sophisticated. So it makes me wonder what's going to happen in the future, you know, because obviously there's people out there now who are grifting like crazy on TikTok, and they're really honing and developing their skills to keep your attention every single second. What happens when that generation comes through and one of those becomes one of these spiritual gurus? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Because this guy's been mega successful, and he's got a couple of, you know, public talking points. Maybe he has some good motives. You know, we haven't really got to the core of his spiritual message, but he seems, at the moment, he seems like he wants to help with people's suffering. So, you know, that seems kind of noble if that's where we're going with it.
yeah.
But that's not necessarily the case if these techniques are misapplied.
Yeah, the techniques of, yeah, I think it's these sales and marketing techniques that, you know, we and commercial enterprises use to, you know, better get you to part with your well-earned cash. And it's just kind of, do you have the product to back it up? And it's hard. I think that's kind of why you get so many gurus, and good ones and bad ones, is that you can't, it's really difficult to pinpoint what it is, what they're actually teaching, and if it's actually applicable and useful. And yeah, maybe we should reconsider giving our opinions on how to make it more applicable, because then they can utilize. But I suppose if they don't have any particular substance anyway, then what's the point?
I don't think we can make prejudgments about people's intentions, though.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine if you were teaching like a CELTA course for teaching languages, but then you were kind of slightly suspicious of one of the teachers? I think they just want to be a language teacher to find a wife or something. I don't know. And so you're like, actually, I'm not going to teach them the best techniques to teach. I don't think. I think you have to give people the tools and moral instruction or integrity. They're sort of other things, really, aren't they, outside of that domain? So,
well, I don't know though,
yeah,
because we've talked about this before. We've talked about having responsibilities as a teacher, because you're in a powerful position, and it's the onus is on you. Like if you were to enter a relationship with a student, then that dynamic is not equal whatsoever. And even if the students kind of consents and instigates that, you have to be the person to be like, no, especially not while I'm your teacher, your active teacher, because it's not right, because you've been put in a position where you have authority, responsibility, and that kind of position comes with certain status, and that can inform like an attraction dynamic, and which might not have been there, but it's only there because of this false environment that's supposed to be a learning environment. The focus is not for you to be the most attractive gal in the bar. The focus of that environment is for this person to learn, and I don't know, they just they've taken it in the wrong direction. And I feel like it's the teacher's responsibility to guide them back along with guiding their learning.
And there is another point to be made here as well, because the initial point I was making was not necessarily about people deliberately misleading or teaching bad things, but it was about low quality content. And I think that's what you get with TikTok.
Yeah,
where you get all the hook, but you learn basically nothing. It's not even that you learn manipulative things. Sometimes there is the manipulative things, but most of the time it's just very surface level. It's just something to just keep you watching for 20 seconds or whatever, and then watch it again maybe. So then it becomes sort of useless because it doesn't tell you anything. But definitely another aspect of it is that people can use these techniques to teach people things that are not good. Don't know if that's the case with this guy. Obviously, we don't know his philosophy.
Yeah,
could well be well intentioned, and to be honest, he's not overdoing it. We kind of went off on a tangent. I mean, he just used some simple, like you say, it's almost like Jamie Keddy. There was a juxtaposition or an interesting contradiction, and then a bit of an explanation and some questions.
Yeah. Maybe we can watch a little bit more and see where we go. I've got him here. He's stood up now. There's a transition. Maybe standing is. Ooh. Okay.
I really don't know how you feel today going out of probably the last step of your education, or at least one step of your education, a major step of your education. Because when I studied in the university, I was… I did not go to my convocation.
Oh, so is this like a graduation speech? Should I move away?
Somewhere, right from my childhood. Are you okay for a story? Right from my childhood, the education that I received, though they sent me to the best possible schools around, it didn't mean anything to me because my sense of listening and looking at people was such. When the teachers were talking whatever, chemistry, biology or mathematics, one thing I could clearly see was whatever they were saying didn't mean a damn thing to them. And I was not willing to listen to anything from somebody who is talking something which doesn't mean anything to him. So, I always
Might be a good place to
looked at the
pause it.
teacher, if he put his…
That's a bit meta, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think I would certainly agree with that. If you have a teacher who's talking about stuff that doesn't mean anything to them, then yeah, obviously that's really poor teaching. The onus is entirely on the student. And I think this does happen a lot. I think teachers teach things that they don't care about, that they're not interested in. And it's one of my lazy ways of identifying a bad teacher. And I say it's a lazy way because I think all teachers occasionally have a bad lesson, or a lesson where they teach something and they don't really want to teach it, and they think, oh, that was a really tedious 2 hours of my life. You know,
Yeah.
so you can't judge someone by
Especially
one lesson.
public, mainstream educators in a school system where, they're covering classes, or, they might be asked to teach something for a semester where they don't have a background in it or a passion for it.
Yeah, and loads of experienced language teachers as well. But
Yeah. What?
no, definitely. I mean, there's teachers, teachers I've worked with, teachers complain about having to teach stuff all the time, and then they say, you say, well, why don't you prepare something new or something interesting or whatever, but they don't really see the value in it, or they don't have the time for preparation or whatever. Actually, it's fascinated me how little interest teachers have in preparing, especially experienced teachers have in preparing new material. There seems to be sort of broadly speaking, two different types of teacher. There's the type of teacher who constantly prepares new material because they just find it boring to teach their old stuff. And then there's the type of teacher who builds up a catalog and then just leans on it and barely ever refines what they've been teaching. I'm not necessarily saying that makes them a bad teacher, just that fact, because I think you can be a good teacher with a good spectrum of old material. But certainly if you're going into it and going, oh, here we go, it's this one, this tedious lesson, then I think there's definitely a problem there. So, what he's picking up on, it's a bit meta. He's giving us a commentary on teachers, but I think it's true. I think it should be a kind of a base requirement that teachers should aim to at least be interested themselves in what they're teaching. And it's a very clear red flag if you're about to go and teach something and you're kind of like, oh, here we go. And then you think, wait a minute, maybe there's something wrong here.
Yeah. I also think it's kind of another one of those subtle marketing psychology tricks where you use it to differentiate yourself from something that you don't want to be associated with. So, you can say, oh, I don't know, you're out on a date or something like that, and you want to, say, oh, look at that guy, he's just so pushy. I don't understand why guys like that are pushy. And by saying that, you are, in a meta way, you're able to kind of lump yourself into the category of guys that aren't pushy. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure if he's cognitively thinking that way, but the way that he maneuvers with language, he's putting down these very interesting signposts, and I'm interested to see kind of where he goes with this.
All right.
Heart into it, I'm willing to be there, otherwise I'm out. Because somewhere I have so many things on my agenda for the day. 24 hours are packed with too many things. I'm not willing to spend an hour or even 5 minutes listening to someone who is talking something which doesn't mean anything to him. Even if he's talking nonsense, it doesn't matter. If it means something to him, I'm willing to listen to it. But if he's talking great things which don't mean anything to him, I'm not willing to listen to him. So as a part of this, I spent… Your education is over, so I can talk. I spent almost 90% of my college hours outside, only 10% inside. Only when I saw somebody who is talking something with passion, I'm there. Otherwise, I'm just out. Now, this education, I'm repeatedly telling Dr. Majumdar and a few other people around here, I'm happy to see somebody's talking with some passion about what they're doing. Somebody, it doesn't matter what they're doing is right, wrong, okay, perfect or not, but someone has put his heart into it, it's okay, because human lives becomes beautiful not because we do the right things. Human lives become beautiful because we put our heart into what we're doing. It doesn't matter what we're doing, whether we're sweeping the floor or managing the country or what we're doing, if we are putting our heart into what we're doing, it's beautiful to be doing that activity. So I think it's a fortune that I've just seen a few people, I hope everybody here is putting their hearts into what they're doing and living in an atmosphere where people are passionate about what they're doing itself is highly enriching. Now that you're stepping into the world, not that you don't know, but anyway, now you're stepping into the world in a different dimension than the way you have been till now. Once you step into the world, there's going to be a lot of filth. There is corruption, there is nonsense, there is so many things happening everywhere. There are some set of people, a certain set of people, who will develop an allergy for this filth. They can't stand it. They usually run to the Himalayas because they're allergic to filth, they can't take it. They want everything pure. But such a thing will not happen because the filth of the world has one way or the other has entered our minds. Whether we empower that filth or not is all the option that we have. But we cannot avoid filth, it is there. All the nonsense that can happen in the world, you know in your head, isn't it? So one set of people develop allergy and try to run away, which they can never do, really. Another set of people, a large segment of people, unfortunately, have come to their own kind of philosophies. Anyway, world is full of filth, let me also become filth. So they have joined that, they have merged into the filth. What we call as filth can also be great manure, Indian spirituality has always used lotus as a symbolism. A lotus flower has always been the main symbolism for Indian spirituality. Why a lotus flower is? A lotus flower grows best where the
water.
filth is thick.
In the mud.
Yeah.
This filth,
Muddy
which
water.
is stinking, which you can't bear, has transformed itself into a fragrant, beautiful flower. This option also is with us every moment of our life. If the atmospheres that we live in make us… we cannot call ourselves managers. If we make the atmospheres that we live in, only then we can call ourselves managers. Being a manager means that we are going to create whatever we see as the most beautiful thing to happen right now. Allowing situations to create you is not management at all. Creating the situations that we want is management. As many of them have said many things, this process of education, there is a certain exhilaration now that education is over, you're stepping into your new dimension of life, the excitement, and it's always beautiful to step into something new that you believe is going to be wonderful. But what we have seen with life with most people is, now let's say somebody got a job, the first day when they went and sat behind this table was the most fantastic place in the world. But within a few years, behind the same table, they're manufacturing blood pressure, diabetes, ulcers and whatnot. This is not because there is something wrong with the jobs that we do. This is not because there is something wrong with the world that we live in. It is simply because we have not paid sufficient attention to ourselves. We have paid too much attention to what is outside. To succeed in the world, people are always thinking, great aspirations will make you successful. Aspiration is just an initial starting point. Just because you aspire for success.
Yeah, I have the same feeling as with the Osteen. It's just I feel like it's kind of repeating. I mean, this is going to be 40 minutes, probably. These going to be hours, and I don't feel like the way that he puts stuff is really interesting, and I understand the use of metaphors and stories, etc. But it always feels like if we were to put it into like a lesson structure terms that we have, where you have kind of like a engage, study, activate, or practice, presentation, practice, production. It just feels like I'm constantly in presentation. I'm just waiting to go, okay, now what do I action with this? And
You mean you constantly engage?
Yeah, engage or in presentation if you're doing PPP or ESA, whatever.
Yeah.
And
It's the first stage.
It's the first stage, and the first gear, whatever you want to say. I'm just waiting to get to a point where, I mean, this is inner management. His book's inner engineering. I'm waiting for the point where he goes, okay, so here are some steps that you can take to help you better manage, better engineer yourself, and this is where, if where kind of in the guru land, someone like Tony Robbins is at the peak of this, because he would say something and then he would say, now let's stop, let's take a moment, I want you to think, I want you to write down something right now of which you could take as a first step towards whatever your goal is. And then when at the end of this lecture, you are going to do this. So they've got something there, and they've got that step to do. And that instantly takes you from something passive to something active. And I know it's more difficult with spiritual teachings, but I think that for me, that's probably gonna be one of the biggest takeaways from these videos, is that spiritual teachings could do with having some sort of practicality to it. Like, I'm surprised because I mean, the Osteen, he did talk about kind of that affirmation kind of stuff, right? So, but he didn't have anyone kind of write them down, or he didn't kind of give structures to how to do those. But I would like to see stuff like that. I think that would benefit a lot of people to kind of have guidance. I wonder how many people out there that like become new Christians, become new Muslims or whatever, and then they're like, one of the things that you have in mind is prayer, right? And how do you do that? Like, if someone's like, "Can you pray?" You should say, "Oh," if I went to a sermon and be like, "Oh, okay, let's pray," I'd be like, what are they putting the hands together? You got to close their eyes.
Yeah.
Like,
That's a very good.
That's
That's a very good point. But I think we will find that it does exist, that kind of spiritual teaching where people put things into practice, and in various schools as well. We didn't see any here in this particular instance. It was all, as you say, very engaging, theoretical. I actually found it quite interesting.
Yeah.
It was interesting in what
I'm
you're
not
saying.
saying it's not.
I completely agree with what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
I think that from an educator perspective, if we moved on to some practice, it would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I would see if I was to be like a spiritual guru or something like that. I'd be thinking about my videos and structuring them in a way to, get not just be engaging in a theoretical way like this, but how can I reach out through the screen to give, my follower, my students, whatever, tools to actually use, and it could be as simple as like, okay, like, I will lead you through a prayer, follow me and my actions, and we will do this together. And like, it could be turned into like a little bit of an ASMR kind of portion of the video where we're just kind of repeat after me, da da da, and then, I mean, like, it'd be like doing a repetition drill, repeat after me, they do it, and, like, oh, then we do it together, and then, I give them like homework, an action point of getting them to go, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to put your prayer down, and I give some sort of structure for them to follow, and then I have them. And another thing, what you could do is you can share that with people in the comments, and they can help guide you to make it a little bit more, I don't know, succinct, what have you. Like, when we were listening to Osteen, and he's kind of giving different verbiage, there must be different ways, when you do prayer, of kind of how you best utilize language to sink in more. Like, when they say in psychology, when you are making a goal, it's better to add a time point to it, right? So you don't just say, oh, I'm gonna learn French would not be a good goal. A better goal would be to say, I am going to get to A1 level French within 6 months, and so it's a little bit more concrete, and it's a little bit more, it's achievable because it's a first step, and it's more defined. If you say learn French, what does that even mean? Like, I've had students where they're like, oh, I want to learn English, and I'm like, you speak English, you've learned English. And they're like, I'm still learning English. I'm like, well, what point do you consider that you've learned English, because I don't know all the words in English language. You know, like I'm still acquiring new fancy terms each and every day. You know, all English speakers do that. We have toilet paper with new words on to help us. So there's going to be no end for you if you don't define it. What does that look like? You know, and I think that could be something that spiritual leaders, religious leaders can actually help, or you know, or build a community within those comments of sharing to help each other. And I think that's kind of another point with religion, is helping build communities too.
Yeah. Yeah. I would go along with that sort of stuff, and I think the things that you're talking about would be very interesting. So certainly to improve the message or the teaching here, some practice steps, because that is what we want, isn't it? It's not just if we're just philosophizing, listening to a talk, thinking about it. We know as educators that that's not the best way of learning anything.
Yeah.
So we do need something else. The lazy way of doing it is to give homework at the end and say, go off and read something.
Mm-hmm.
But much better if there's some sort of interesting task going on. So I think some sort of engagement like that would be good. I wonder if there's sort of an engagement cost for people when you move on to that practice stage. So if we are someone who has refined the way that they speak in a way that they want it to be sort of receptive content, like that people listen to it, is there a cost to then asking your audience or your students to do something? Like, do you sort of lose people at that point? Is it better for, let's say, engagement if you just kind of keep telling your stories? Because then people can just kind of tune out, or not tune out, but kind of be tuned in, but passively.
Yeah.
You know? But as soon as you say to them, oh, write something down, like Tony Robbins, right? He says, okay, pause the video, pick up a pen and start writing stuff down. It's like suddenly there's what, I have to do something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's kind of where I get squirrely with all of this, is that is this actually education built for learning, or is it really just entertainment? This is just spiritual entertainment, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
question.
If people are watching this and think and are engaged and being entertained, just because you're being engaged and entertained doesn't necessarily mean that you're learning anything. You might be getting nuggets here and there, but you know, you might be spending hours and hours going through books and DVD courses and videos and yada yada yada, and that time that you've invested in that, you could have actually learned something in a more succinct way.
Shinzen Young has a term for it. He calls it a spiritual junkie.
Yeah. I definitely
like
gone through points of that.
You're just junking out on your spiritual. You're having your spiritual McDonald's over and over again.
Yeah, and having your little mini epiphanies, like, oh, they say, oh yeah, that's a really good point, and you're like, wait, hold on, that's a really obvious point. it's just packaged in a very pretty way. Okay, so with this, is there anything kind of that we could take away from this that we're like, this was a really unique point among religious speakers, teachers, or is it more of just the same? Anything that you'd like to add as to improve?
I think we had a stimulating conversation about where things could go with it, but I don't think there's anything else to particularly say about what we've seen in this video. I do think it will be interesting going forward, though, to look at spiritual teachers and to find the guys who are doing a bit more practicality, because I think we will find it. I mean, I know I've seen some where they do more, where they integrate more practical things into the teaching. So I think that could be interesting maybe for our next video, if we find someone who's doing some sort of practical implementation, so we can see what happens with the second P when it comes to spiritual teaching.
Yeah, is this the
Or
P
the
that goes
the
along
S.
with your D?
The E and the S.
The E
No,
and the
sorry,
S.
no. It'll be the S that goes along with the E.
Oh yeah, the study.
ESA, yeah.
I'm like, what? Where are we? Where are we anymore? We're back in this filth that he's talking around.
It's that classic like teacher thing, isn't it? That people try and show how many acronyms they know, and that basically says how much of an experienced teacher you are. If you can keep throwing out new acronyms.
I love that.
STEM,
at some point, we should watch a bit of Always Sunny in Philadelphia with when, I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's one of the characters has systems for doing stuff, and he always has them in acronyms, and he teaches them, and he writes down the acronym to make it easier. You know, than using it as a mnemonic. Yeah. Okay, but we'd love to hear from you that's out there watching, listening. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit that bell so you get notification for the next video in this Religious Teachers series. Bye-bye. If you're looking for more information from myself, you can go to teamteacherchina.com. We've got a whole bunch of materials, PowerPoints that you can use instantly in the classroom. We've got a Team Teacher China YouTube channel where we have videos teaching you how to use those materials. Team Teacher English, where we put those materials into a video form for self-study. And Team Teacher Baby, where I take my experience as a teacher and put that into parenting.
And go to youtube.com/Professor Rich to see some English teaching. You can catch me weekly live streams on Oxford Online English YouTube channel. Oh, and also you can do a YouTube search for POG Space UK, and you would get my alpha version of my new gaming channel, which actually just have some trial content on there at the moment. You can email us here at eltunderthecovers@gmail.com if you have anything you'd like to contribute to the show.
Smash that like button, share and subscribe.
And watch 100% of the video and don't click
Exactly.
off. Thank you.
Bye.